tatta dhim tatakita dhim tadim tattam.
Hello again, welcome to my channel. This is Padma Menon and I am really delighted to welcome you all. On this channel I share information about ancient goddess practices and wisdom from my culture, which is India. This past week I've been visited by quite an unusual goddess. Her name is Shashti and she is a very ancient goddess. And women in India, in many parts of India, still worship her and invoke her. She is the goddess that in these times supports women through their pregnancy and childbirth, and up until the child is about 16 days or 16 years. There is this backstory to all this. And it's interesting, it's been an interesting week because I work with several women and they're all in different parts of the world in my individual program. And for many of them, they've had premonitions of this particular energy, this particular goddess energy. And she really descended very strongly for me. And so it kind of connected with several other women that I'm practicing with as well. And I think it's because we have very strong energy of the mind in the times we live in, which is like in the goddess tradition, it's the masculine energy. So in many parts of the world, we're all living under a lot of constraints. We've got lots of controls and lots of restrictions, and that's very sort of masculine mental energy is really strong. The talking and the debating and the arguing and the polarization and the division, lots of mental energy. And Shashti is this incredible power of the goddess to actually move the mind to its sacred or the divine masculine energies. And I just thought, actually, this is really relevant that she appears suddenly in the lives of me and many other women I'm practicing with in different ways. They didn't know about Goddess Shashti, but many of the things they shared, like several of them feeling this, the kind of constraining energy of the mind. So in different ways when they reflected, I could feel there was this premonition of Shashti. So I'm going to say a little bit about Shashti, and this talking is going to be a bit longer than my other videos, and this is because it really will give you a context for the practice. So the practice I'm going to share with you is quite an unusual practice of Shashti, and it's really a lovely practice to move the mind towards, for want of a better word, towards its higher energies or towards its more sacred kind of movements and dimensions. So in Shashti, we really respect the mind. The mind is very powerful, we know that. And it's no use just saying, I will just be out of the mind or I'll control the mind. The mind actually does most of the controlling. So the only way we do is to actually propitiate the mind, to awaken its sacredness, to awaken its divine dimensions. And that is what Shashti does. So on the one level, Shashti is the birthing of the child, but in another level, in the goddess tradition, she is the birthing of the consciousness. And of course, in the goddess tradition, there is no difference between anything that happens in the material world. So childbirth is the same as birthing the consciousness. It requires that same physical surrender, that physical release and allowing that we do when we are in childbirth. So it's the same thing. So hence Shashti is also the goddess of birthing our consciousness. And when we birth our consciousness, the mind always has a role. It's either snatching away. And so one of the energies of Shashti is the black cat, the wild black cat. And this cat is presented as this creature that, just snatches away things, which cats do. They at lightning speed, they can snatch things and go away. And so here's what the mind does too. When we are practicing and there are these subtle insights, which is always the nature of insights in this practice, but then the mind will just remove them and it's like, whoop, that never happened, or you can't remember it, or it's not important. So this nature of this interplay of the mind and the birthing of the consciousness. And so on the one hand, Shashti is both that. She is the energy like the cat that can snatch away. But if she's propitiated, if we match her through the dance, then she can actually help us. And what is about the 16 days and the 16 years? So in the goddess tradition, one of the very early stages when you begin the practice is that you have to find your Veera self or your heroic self. And that self is presented as a 16-year-old. So it doesn't mean that you're actually 16 years. It means that you have to find your 16-year-old self. So for most of us, it's that part of ourselves that doesn't carry the weight of all the years and the cynicism and the disappointments, but it's that self that is young, that is curious, adventurous, and that's got the courage to be in abandon and try anything. So that's the 16-year-old self. So here's the summary of the story. So Shashti, if we are childlike, if we are childish with our mind and we allow the mind to just snatch and go here and there, then she will afflict us. She will afflict us with dis-ease, which is the imbalance of our energies. But if we propitiate her and we really tell her, please, Shashti, be with us, protect us, and take us to this 16 years of age, then once we come into our Veera self, Shashti is our best friend. So we just need to make sure that she knows that we're well aware what's going on and we just want her to support us. And the mind, here's the divine sacred dimension of the mind. The mind is a great protector. So when the mind is doing its snatching at the moment, it's because the mind, for centuries we've told the mind that we don't like things that we don't know. We want to have a roadmap. If we have to go anywhere without a roadmap, we don't really like that. So the mind has learned to protect us. So what we want is to invoke those protective energies of the mind through Shashti, the divine dimension of the mind, and get her on board so that we can move towards our Veera self. And this is a beautiful practice for these times where there's very strong mental energies. So rather than resisting it, fighting against it, it's to try and invoke the divine masculine, the sacred dimensions of the mind. So that's enough of the talking. I do hope it gives you a context because it's important to have that kind of bubbling around when we go into this practice. So in the practice, I'm going to use a traditional revealed movement from the Natya Shastra, which is a 3,000-year-old Indian dance text. And this movement is about a big cat, so it's like a lion or a wild cat or a big cat, and it's also the sensation of the plowing, plowing the land to plant crops, that kind of plowing. So the invitation is that as we do this, we are matching that essence of the wild cat, but we are also digging, we're plowing, and through the plowing, we attract, we draw the energy, the consciousness of Shashti to us. Yes, so we transform our base mental consciousness into something that is divine, that is beautiful, and that is sacred. Okay. So we start with dropping into our lower body, and we keep our feet in a V shape, just softening the knees, keeping the femoral joint open, and loosen up the hips. Loosen up the hips. So let's start with the lower body, which is what we always do in this tradition. Okay, so we loosen up the hips. every video of mine will probably have the loose hips, because that is a core goddess movement across the world. Yeah, the loosening of the hips. So drop into the weight in your feet. And now we take the right leg and we move it right across. Right across. The body is still facing forward. Now we lift the right hip, the left hip, sorry. We lift the left hip, and as you lift it, this leg lifts up, and then we flick, drop, and you move this one across, lifting the hip. Again, the foot comes up, so, and flick, and across. So doing that again, we take the foot across, lift this hip, and then this is called a scorpion. It's like the tail of the scorpion. It's like the snatching. You know, the cat just poof, snatch, and then lift, boom, shh, and lift, shh, boom. And so really to feel the movement, the lifting from the hip is really important, because that's when you'll start to feel that sensation in your lower body. The hands are simply so, like cat claws, close to your body. They don't do anything. The hands are just there. So, starting again. Chin down, chest is nice and spread and open. Don't forget about the hip. Flick. 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 I'm going to add one more thing. Every little bit of the movement helps to change your sensation. Okay, so that is the eyes. So what you want to do with the eyes is just go corner to corner. You know how cats have that really secretive look? They never give everything away. They have that mystery about them. There's always more than meets the eye. And so that side to side, the corners of your eyes. Now let's put them all together. And I'm really going to invite you, don't get stuck on the technique. Yes, just get a feel for it. There's always more than the form. That is the nature of these kind of movements. There's always more than the form in the movement. So at some point, don't aim for perfection. Just move and start to feel what it's opening up. So here we are, arms here, back into that position with the weight down. And this time with the eyes. Flick. 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 Let's do that one more time. This is the last time we'll do it. I'm really going to invite you. Don't worry about whether you're doing it perfectly. There is no mastery and perfection. I'm just going to invite you, can you start feeling Shashti? So this is the essence of Shashti. And it's just by invoking the essence, we change our state of being. We don't really need to do anything else. It's not some kind of technical thing, you know, if you do this and this and this, just move in it and it'll change your state of being. Okay, so here's the essence of Shashti. Flick. 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 Just holding that. And just to finish, we come back to another simple Shashti. It's like she's holding many babies. Yes, that's the birthing. We always birth consciousness. Each time we practice, it's a rebirth. It's not that you birth and then you hang on to that memory. It's always birthing. That is the practice. So she has many babies, holding them in her arms. And so let's end with a little invocation to Shashti here. Hips moving, eyes, just like the cat. So we invoke Shashti. We say, "Oh Goddess Shashti, be with us in these times. Don't afflict us, but support us to come into our heroic Vira mind. Bring us to the divinity and sacredness of our minds. We invoke you, Goddess Shashti." So I do hope that you will enjoy this practice. It's a really lovely practice to do in these times. I feel like Shashti descended because she really wants to help us to move these mental energies into a more divine and more sacred dimension or sacred possibility, because the mind is sacred. It's not that it isn't. And this is the invitation to actually find that sacredness of the mind, which can actually support us in birthing our consciousness or our sacred self. Thank you again for joining me. I hope you will tell me how this practice was for you, and I look forward to your company again.